or you're trading GBP JPY, right? You want to make sure that you understand when GBP JPY is actually moving the most, right? You want to make sure that you understand um how GBP JPY is moving, during New York session. You want to know how GB JPY is moving during Asian session. You want to make sure you trade just about every session just to see when it moves the most, what time it moves the most, and where you can get the most pips from, right? Where you can get the most points and make the most money, right? So these are the simple things that you really just, need to understand that you don't become a professional trader overnight, right? And you're always learning something new. Like I said, I learned something on gold. I mean, I've been observing it and I've been trading gold, right? But I also been actually seeing what gold has for us, right? Let me share my screen really quick. Get on to I can talk all day, right? I can yap the whole class, right, on things that I like to do. And trading is a thing that I like to do. Not only trading, but teaching next person how to actually trade effectively, right? All right, share my screen and we'll get into my goal discovery. All right, gold. Well, support and resistance. Hit share again. All right, support and resistance levels. Just getting all this stuff off the screen. All right. How to identify support and resistance levels, right? Support levels, price levels where the demand is strong enough to prevent further declines, right? To prevent further declines. Resistance levels, price levels where selling pressure is strong enough to prevent further rises. So keep that in mind. Look for zones rather than fixed lines, right? Historical actions help confirm key levels. Psychological levels and round numbers, right? Traders tend to place orders at round numbers, which is 1.1000 or 150.00, right? So make sure you understand the round numbers. These levels often act as natural support and resistance levels, right? These levels naturally act as support and resistance levels. Institutional traders and algorithm focused on these price points, right? So keep that in mind. Use them in combination with historical price action. All right. Turning support and resistance levels and vice versa, right? So we're looking for the break and retest method, right? We're looking for when price breaks through a support level, it may retest it as a new resistance, right? When price breaks through a resistance level, it may retest it as a new support and vice versa, right? Confirm through volume, strong volume support and breakouts, right? Make sure you understand that. How to use support and resistance in trading, right? Identifying key levels based on price history, combining support and resistance with other indicators, looking for price rejection signals like wicks, engulfing candles, and things of that nature, right? These are the things that we look for at the support and resistance levels. Plan trades based on bounce or breakout strategies, right? So our breakout strategy, right? We like to look at, what is doing when it breaks out of that consolidation, right? We may see price and consolidation, and once it breaks out of that consolidation, we are not entering until you actually um hit that retest, right? We're not entering until it actually retests that method, right? We just it retests that, that zone, that area that it actually broke out of, right? So, if it breaks out of the top of that zone, you're looking for it to retest the top of that zone, right? If it breaks out at the bottom of that zone, then you're going to be you're going to be, retesting and entering at that retest at the bottom of that zone. So keep that in mind. All right, practical applications, right? So you need to get on your chart, right? And you need to do these things because, like I said, me doing these things just off of on the gold trades alone, right? Or, just me trading daily, the same pair, right? Because you can see this stuff on other pairs, but, it's good to actually find one pair that you actually can understand. That's why I call it marrying the pair because you guys can understand that pair. You know what that pair is gonna do, at 8:30. You know what that pair is gonna do at 12 p.m. You know what that pair is gonna do at 5:30, right? At 5:30 p.m. When the market closes, right? Things happen around that time as well, and I'll tap into that once we actually get on the charts. All right, use volume and candlestick patterns for additional confirmations. Observe price reactions at key levels, right? Backtest strategies using historical price action. So the back testing is key, right? Back testing is key. So this is when you actually get into your demo account, right? And you're back testing what you've learned, right? If I show you, something inside the class, you're gonna go in there and you're gonna actually back test that strategy or back test what me or Kyle or Kilbay or is teaching you, right? You're gonna go in there, you're gonna test that out for yourself, right? We're not just gonna take our word for it, right? Don't just take our word for it. Make sure you actually do your due diligence and actually get in the trade, right? And understand why you're getting in the trade. Homework assignment. Yes, yes. Everybody loves homework, right? Make sure we get that homework done because, like I said, me just doing my homework, I was actually able to discover some things that I've been trading gold, but it's some certain things come to your forefront, right? Come to your subconscious when you're trading, and then it may later hit you like eureka, right? Like a surprise, right? So make sure that you're staying consistent, right? Consistent, discipline, and patience, right? Those are the three pillars of trading, right? So select three different assets: stocks, forex, or cryptocurrencies, right? And we're actually able to trade all three of those just by understanding the charts, just by understanding support and resistance levels, right? Because all of these assets use the same thing. All of these assets use the chart, right? And we have to understand how to read the chart. Drawing support and resistance zones on each chart, right? Identifying at least one psychological level or round number. Be prepared to present your analysis in the next class, right? Be prepared to share your analysis in the next class, right? So keep that in mind. And everybody make sure that you understand that practice makes perfect, right? We're gonna hop on over before we hop on the chart, we're gonna hop on over to Forex Factory. Make sure you write this down on your pen and pad that Forex Factory is for news, right? Now we're not just sitting here watching the news, right? We're just looking at certain things on Forex Factory that can help you in your trading career, right? When I first started trading, I actually was a fundamental trader, right? A fundamental trader means that I just went by the news and I partially went by support and resistance, right? But that's really when, I was just learning how to trade and learning that, the news fundamentals actually moves the market. So, what I do is I come on here and I look for what day it is, right? Come on here and actually look and see what day it is, right? And let's update this because, yeah, so Wednesday the 15th, right? So AUD we have dues for AUD at 9:30, and that is key, right? That is definitely key when it comes to if you want to catch a big move, right? So we're gonna probably end up looking at AUD, right? Just to look at to see what it could possibly be doing, right? And you want to pair that up with another pair, which is I usually do AUD USD. So that's going to be a that would have been at the top of my list to trade at 9:30, right? Also look to see what's going on for the rest of the week. Nothing really going on too much for the rest of the week, to be honest. And I'm surprised to actually see that, right? These yellow folders right here are minimum impact, right? Yellow folders are the lower impact, right? So, but don't sleep on these orange folders, right? The unemployment claims, that's the same unemployment employment change and unemployment rate up here, right? These are red, but these down here are actually orange, right? So with that being said, do not sleep on the orange, right? And then, like I said, always keep up with what session you're in, right? Always keep up to know what session you're in. Know that Tokyo starts at 8, ends at 5 a.m., right? London starts at what is that, 3 a.m. and ends at 12 p.m., right? New York opens up at 8 and closes at 5:30 p.m. So keep that in mind and know when they actually overlap because that's when you're going to be making the majority of your money. So keep that in mind. Great tool to know what session you're actually in. So when you actually choose your pair that you actually want to trade, right? See what session it moves the most in. Does it move the most in the city session? Does it move the most in Tokyo session? Or does it move the most London session or New York session? Or it may move the most with in between the overlap, right? And that overlap happens when these two right here are actually highlighted. So we're actually in the overlap of the Sydney and Tokyo session, which is the AUDs, the JPYs. So these things are gonna be the ones that are gonna be moving at around that time, right? So a quick little overview of that. Quick little overview of Forex Factory because I like to review Forex Factory. But we're gonna go over also put what where you would like to actually put in your trades, right? What type of trades you want to put in. I'm going to look at AUDs. I'm going to go ahead on over to gold and show you how what I look for on gold, right? So this was the markup from last class. So we're going to go on over here to gold.